you very much, Michael. We'll be coming back to these issues after the coffee break, so if you have any questions, do keep them in your mind or write them down. But two particular issues there where the misuse of statistics is endemic, both the public health studies showing no effect economically from bans and showing a very positive effect for heart attacks after bans. We'll crack straight on now, if I can introduce Patrick. And he will talk about the campaign to call time on alcohol freedom.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin with what I consider the 10 scariest words in the English language. Hello, I'm from Washington, and I'm here to help you. But seriously, although I'm not sure how helpful I can be, I am very pleased to have come here to add my voice to your efforts to stem the prohibitionist tide. If you feel that what you're witnessing and experiencing on the prohibitionist front is somewhat surreal, you're not alone. As that icon of American popular culture, arguably global popular culture, Homer Simpson famously observed, "Prohibition, they tried that in the movies and it didn't work." And if we could actually achieve it, would we really want to live in an alcohol-free world? That great Italian-American philosopher, you may have heard of him, Frank Sinatra, he may have put it best when he said, and I quote, "I feel sorry for people who don't drink. When they wake up in the morning, that's as good as they're going to feel all day." Now, again, finally on a more serious note, my formal remarks this morning, which I do hope are helpful to you, in a couple of parts. First of all, I want to give you an overview of where we stand. That is, what the public health establishment is up to with regard to all of the so-called vices, especially alcohol, as that's what I've been asked to talk to you about this morning. And secondly, I want to look at a couple of the specific instruments through which the anti-alcohol campaign is being channeled. Now, the past generation of welfare statism saw the unduly protective nanny state bleed into every sinew of our daily lives. One sociologist by the name of David Marsland, he's explained that once you have a big welfare state in place, the excuse for this kind of state nannying is infinite in scale. This continues the process of reducing self-reliance and handing responsibility for ourselves to external bodies. So things have been bad, yet just when you thought things could not get worse, they did. Case in point, and in my opinion probably the most important case in point, 2 years ago, Oxford University's Nuffield Council of Bioethics published what has become a seminal report that provided the global public health establishment with the explicit rationale for a dramatic change in the relationship between the citizen and the state. The key assumption of the Nuffield report and of the respective European and North American public health establishments that have begun to implement at different speeds and with different emphases its policy prescriptions is that the provision of health information whereby the state provides its citizens with information useful for making informed personal decisions, that provision of health information is a failure. According to the Nuffield report, public information fails to persuade individuals to take the appropriate action to keep themselves healthy. Now, primary examples of this failure include alcohol use, poor diet, lack of exercise, and of course, smoking. This means that, as the Nuffield report put it, quote, "more invasive public policy may be needed." Now, several assumptions drive both the Nuffield report's recommendations and subsequently the public health thinking and policy making of most Western governments. I'll run through those quickly, but because they are important. Most of the healthcare burden is driven by disease that results from lifestyle decisions. Secondly, most of the healthcare burden is therefore, in theory, preventable. And the cost of most lifestyle-related disease isn't recovered from the individuals with such diseases or from the industries whose products contribute to these diseases. Individual autonomy cannot be the paramount value in healthcare. Individual choice as a basis for health is, quote, to quote the Nuffield report, too simplistic. Individual freedoms may have to give way to the coercive power of the state. And this is my personal favorite. Interventions, including coercive actions, to change behavior, quote, may proceed in the absence of evidence of their effectiveness. Therefore, individuals have a clear responsibility to refrain from lifestyle decisions that lead to disease, and consequently, treatment can be denied to those who refuse to change their behavior. Now, the authors of the Nuffield report, they term this approach an ethic of stewardship, which they, with straight faces, describe as a new liberal approach to health, individual responsibility, and the state. Now, in truth, of course, it's an extreme and an extremely dangerous form of nannying dressed up in stewardship clothing. It's really bullying rather than nannying, threatening people rather than merely nudging them in the appropriate direction. As the last decade drew to a close, it was clear that state-sponsored lifestyle hectoring was out, state-sponsored coercion is in. The nanny state has, as has been argued elsewhere, become the bully state. In most Western countries, the state's healthcare role since World War II has been threefold: provide information, promote health, and provide universal provision of service. In contrast, the bully state's new liberalism promises health stewardship and the state as health sovereign. Now, the evidence presented by our new self-anointed health stewards in defense of their assumption that the provision of information alone is a failure is the demonstrated inability of so many in today's society to lead quote-unquote healthy lives. The fact that there are so many alcoholics, gamblers, smokers, and fat people provides the necessary proof that the classical liberal rationale for respecting individual choice is untenable. Consequently, the case for state interventions to change the health environment and individual behavior, it's claimed, is an unassailable one. During the past couple of years, therefore, Western nations, as you're aware, have been introducing a myriad of measures representing health stewardship in action: regulations, taxes, and programs addressing alcohol, obesity, problem gambling, and smoking. So that's what they think, and that's what they're starting to do. Now, this is the point in the storyline where one may reasonably assume one of the leading characters posed the perfectly reasonable question, what does the evidence say? Sadly and perplexingly, rarely has that happened. Now, if it did, what would a balanced reading of the research tell us? It would tell us, I think, the following things. Providing rudimentary health information hasn't failed. What has failed is the state's expansive attempt to instill fear in the minds of its citizens about many of their dietary and recreational choices. Serious health warnings are diluted when consumers are deluged by warnings about every imaginable item, ingredient, and eventuality. There's already evidence, for example, that consumers are confused rather than educated by warning labels. Clearly, most of these labels should come with a very simple warning of their own: danger, bureaucrats at work. Prevention has failed to ward off lifestyle illnesses for the fundamental reason that such illnesses are multifactorial, and therefore it's clinically impossible to identify the sole cause of a disease. Consider, for instance, the multiplicity of risk factors for both lung cancer and heart disease, 30 for the former and over 300 for the latter. Consequently, health promotion has failed as a policy tool.